Near the river, a pair of photographers are attempting to get a good shot of the local birds when they by accident discover the physique of a woman. Meanwhile, Pinnacle forensic pathologist Kane is finishing instructing some other category at the police academy. This is his ultimate semester as a professor due to the fact he'll quickly be retiring to spend greater time with his daughter who is dwelling in the USA. She was once supposed to be journeying today, however her day out got delayed after class is over. Ka is known as by means of the police to look at the body, found near the river. There he's surprised to locate Detective Min, who used to be a scholar. Min is not taken seriously by using her peers for being a woman, and she's frequently relegated to minor tasks. At least this time, she finds something useful to get her commenced mysterious footprints that she takes. Pictures of King takes a peer at the body and finds that it has been dismembered. However, the assassin left all the parts in the back of together, without for an arm. Later at the police station, they appear over the little facts they have. The victim is Anna, 29 years, historic that had been said missing. Gay asks for theories and Men thinks the assassin wanted them to locate and identify the body. Detective Y berates her as standard, thinking this used to be simply some loopy man with a grudge, but Ka has the same opinion with her and asks her to stay for the autopsy. Ka is cold and methodical with his work, however guys cannot stand the sight for long and leaves the room to throw up later. Ka offers the copipracy of the preliminary autopsy. You now not died from a fractured cranium brought on by way of a lengthy hard object. Soil containing granite used to be located in her nostrils and mouth, marking the location the place she died. There had been also symptoms of salt that indicate she was dismembered with the aid of the sea. So the physique was once moved between the killing and the cutting. Yet the parts had been thrown in the river, which adds a 0.33 area to the list. Min remembers there is a construction organization working on the Coastal Reclamation Challenge and their factories are on the seafront. Meanwhile, Y has observed out you and I used to have a boyfriend and the law enforcement officials are divided into teams to comply with these two leads. Yoon goes around the town asking if anyone has considered the boyfriend and has to arrest a couple of gamblers until he comes throughout Bidu taking part in the horses. He's taken to the station for interrogation, but Bidu swears he hasn't considered Y and I in a month. In the night time of the crime, he had been playing in the meantime. Min interviews a few manufacturing facility managers who swear they're working 24/7 to hold up with order, in particular because they hold being confused by using environmental protesters. So it is not possible for a homicide to show up there besides them seeing it. However, the employees nonetheless end up discovering the missing arm in the soil. Later in the evening, Min visits Kag at his home to talk about the case. And she's instructed to open the door with a piece of rope. He left there because the digital lock is broken after petting K's pleasant dog. She gives the crime snapshots to Kang, who reaches the conclusion the killer is trying to inform them something and that the three areas have something infrequent afterward. Min stays up late investigating the locations. The next day, she has an significant record to existing that UN tries to dismiss, however Chief O offers her a chance. The environmental group, I Love Venus, has been trying to cease the development agency from destroying the sea and river life. The chief Soho wrote a e-book comparing the nearby river to the well-known statue of Venus and the way the authorities is destroying the river coast to the way Venus had been severed in the past. This injury suits the nation of UN's body. And the three areas had all been underneath building via the identical company. The day of the crime, there was a disagreement between the employees and the protesters. So operations were stopped for 20 minutes. Leaving adequate time for the killer to strike. The leader has a disability that motivates him to walk with a cane, which fits the twisted footprint in the little gap in the mud too. Men's lookup is taken significantly and she's sent together with you to arrest the leader, Lee Soho, who surrenders himself effortlessly, claiming to have to pay for what he did later at the station. Y cannot get Soho to talk about something other than the significance of the species dwelling in the river. Some men takes over the investigation. She is aware of Soho's family used to be one of the many that lost their ships when building started, which skill they additionally lost their livelihood and had to depart their homes quickly after this. Soho's father, Mr. Lee, died, and his sister Soo-jin ended matters for herself. Min also exhibits she sprayed water outside to take a new footprint from Soho, which matches the one from the scene of the crime. Seeing this evidence, Soho admits to being the killer. Meanwhile, Kane is at the airport waiting for his daughter, but she in no way arrives. A stranger strategies him to supply him an envelope sent by means of Soho, and inside he finds pics of his daughter. How one tied up the stranger is already gone. So Ka cannot ask him anything. And at that moment, Min calls him to inform him the killer was Soho. The identical man or woman that sent the envelope. Ka hurries toward the station. While he calls a buddy at customs who confirms Ha-won did arrive the different day as planned. And the prolong had been alive from the kidnapper's lower back in the station. Y is asking by some means for the details, but he doesn't say something and only looks at the clock as if ready for something. Ka arrives then and asks for a second with Soho, who is not amazed to see him. His deal is simple. Ka need to show him innocent in 3 days, or his daughter will die. Determined to assist, PA1 Ka rushes to the lab to see what evidence has been determined so far. The analyst shows him the blood-covered saw they found, but the DNA take a look at hasn't been carried out yet. Ka takes a scalpel on his way out and goes domestic to use it on his dog. He additionally requests a psychiatric evaluation of the suspect to delay the investigation afterward. Ka calls the analyst and asks him to wait for him at the office. With him out of the lab, Ka sneaks inside, washes the saw, and covers it with the dog's blood. Instead, Min additionally comes to the lab to pick up the check outcomes and finds the analyst in the office. Then Ka indicates up and tells the analyst to end his work earlier than having a chat with Min, saying Soho's confined mobility could not have allowed him to kill an individual and the evidence is circumstantial. So they have to wait for the record earlier than asking for a warrant. Next, Ka asks for a choose from a cop pal and gets to visit Soho in prison. Wanting proof that his daughter's alive, Soho takes K's smartphone and makes a name, angering Ka. When he discovers Soho is only pretending to talk to someone, Ka starts beating Soho up solely to be interrupted by way of his telephone ringing. It's Ha-won who asks her father for assist earlier than the call is cut off. Then Ka asks Soho to tell him where the homicide weapon is, but he refuses and asks Ka to think about why he killed the girl. Instead, the next moves to smash into Uno's home. Ka finds a commercial enterprise card and makes a call to meet a buddy of the victims. She doesn't apprehend some way and explains there weren't men in Uno's life, barring for Bidu, who used to be just a harasser and not an proper boyfriend. The subsequent morning, the analyst offers guys the check outcomes and they're taken aback to see the blood on the notice belonged to a canine later at the station. Chief O is livid by using this development. So he demands the crew to locate the homicide weapon ASAP. However, Min is being shamed for her failure and asked to continue to be in the back of with the paperwork. Meanwhile, Ka is trying to find Bundu when Min calls him to ask for the post-mortem report. He pretends he stayed at domestic because he was ailing whilst talking to her. Ka sees Bdu on the road and receives equipped to trap him. But then Min mentions, the police officers are searching for the murder weapon and Ka decides to take care of that. First, riding like a maniac, Ka manages to arrive at Soho House first and finds a photo of him with Park the stranger from the airport. At that moment, the police arrive. So K runs to hide, accidentally shedding the scalpel. On the way, the police officers pick up the scalpel and find a crowbar with blood outside, taking it as the homicide weapon. In the meantime, Min goes to K's residence to check on him. Since he might not reply the bell, she receives internal with the aid of pulling the rope and finds the canine who has a bandage round its blood-covered leg. Min takes the canine to the vet who tells her the wound is a reduce from a particularly sharp knife, perhaps a scalpel. The place of the wound indicates it's been made on Ka's return to Kang. He goes to the nearby police station to ship the photo to a police friend, however a cop that acknowledges the boys and offers him the data he needs. Park was once an orphan that Mr. Lee took in. He and Soho grew up as brothers. Park and Soho's sister, Soo-jin, had been dating, but after she died, they moved out of town. Ka goes to the Lee's abandoned childhood house with the aid of the river. And whilst most of it is empty, breaking into a locked room, comes with a stunning discovery. The walls are protected with pics of Yon and Hawan. There additionally are ancient news articles about a pupil that had been attacked by means of 3 boys from wealthy families. But these boys have been declared innocent at that moment. Park arrives at their residence and sees Ka causing him to run away. Ka goes after him and gets hit via automobile in the process. So by using the time he reaches Park, he is too weak to combat Park, beats him up and reminds him to play by the policies earlier than knocking him out. When he wakes up, Ka returns to the station, remembering the nighttime his daughter obtained in poor health, and punches the reflect in anger later. Men is asked to take the scalpel to the lab and she remembers what the vet said. She asks the analyst if the lab was ever empty and he points out the night Ka had asked him to come to the office. Then Men searches the office, finding the damaged reflect and the photo of Soho with Park. In the meantime, Ka visits Soho and confesses. He's eventually remembered who he is. The abused lady from the newspaper articles was once Soho's sister Soo-jin, and Kang's testimony about the post-mortem record had helped the criminals get free. He explains he solely did his job returned then, and that now the law enforcement officials have the murder weapon. So Ka can't do something to assist Soho anymore. However, Soho nevertheless refuses to break the deal and tells him to locate a way. Meanwhile, the detectives discover that the crowbar is not the genuine murder weapon due to the fact the blood on it would not shape UNOS and the thickness does not healthy the wound. Both after the Soho visit is over, Ka bumps into Min, who tries to arrest him for tampering with evidence. Ka explains his daughter is in trouble, however leads barring giving guys any greater information. Min decides to research Ka and discovers his involvement in Soo-jin's case. Not solely Ka had been in cost of the autopsy, had been one of the witnesses. Min tries to discuss to Soho about it, but he solely tells her no longer to trust Ka before giving her his king, claiming it is the actual murder weapon. In the meantime, Ka finds Bing-do once more and calls A to assist him with the plan. Ari approaches Bing-do to have a drink with him at a bar, and then takes him to a motel room, the place they spend a few hours together. Ko retrieves the glass bead used, and Ari brings him Bidussi before accepting her pay. Although she did this due to the fact she desires revenge for Yuna. Suddenly Ka is approached via men who obtained a name from Park to tell her about K's whereabouts. However, Park indicates up as nicely and knocks Men out to give Ka time to finish his plan. While Men is taken to a hospital, Kang returns to the lab to subsequently do the post-mortem report. He floor-reviewing does fingerprints and seed internal the body. Thus, his final record makes him look like the killer while working. He remembers the trial of Soo-jin's case where Yu had testified that she noticed Soo-jin with the boys. And she had seemed like she used to be having fun. Such testimony made Mr. Lee cry out in the middle of the trial due to the fact they were selling his daughter's name. Then Ka testified that there hadn't been any torn tissue located in the body. So there wasn't any proof of violence or force. These two memories made the judge decide that the 3 boys have been innocent. By the time the detectives attempt to prosecute Solar Ho, he is following K's diagram and has gotten himself a legal professional that explains his confession had been finished under duress. And he's now taking it back. The cane fit the structure of the wound, but it didn't have blood on it. And the footprints can be explained with the aid of the truth Soho lives in the area. So they cannot be used as proof either. Then the autopsy file arrives and the detectives have no choice, however, to let Soho go and arrest BDU. Instead, when Soho leaves, the station Park choices him up and Kang follows them to their house at the hospital. A pal of men's brings her some information in Soo-jin's case. 2 exclusive autopsy reviews had been used, and one of them did encompass tissue damage, which means Ka gave false testimony. It wouldn't be shocking if the boy's wealthy dad and mom paid the witnesses off because the total case had been a mess. Speaking of the boys, they're all lifeless now. And by adding Yu no longer to the list, men's suspects, Ka is next. She leaves the sanatorium to look for Ka and asks her co-workers to dispatch a unit to Soho's house. However, when she appears at the image again, while ready at the stoplights, she remembers the deserted childhood home with the aid of the river and decides to go there. Instead, at Soho's house, Ka shows up to make an apology for Sujin and demands to comprehend the place his daughter is. Soho doesn't buy the apology and hits him for promoting his sister's name, causing Cog to remember what else happened that day. He had been sick with an uncommon sickness that required her to go to the USA for remedy in order to pay for it. Ka customary the bribe from the boy's parents to trade his testimony. Mr. Lee had approached Cog to ask for mercy, but Cog overlooked him whilst a younger Soho watched from afar return to the present. Ka requested Soho to kill him as an alternative of his daughter, as Soho explains how a lot hatred he grew up with due to the fact all and sundry in city thought his sister was once a tart. So it's too late for Ka to ask for mercy for his daughter. Furious Ka jumps on Soho and beats him up till he confesses the area of Yi1. Ka drives out at a high speed, almost crashing towards the detective unit. On his way, Min arrives at the river residence and is located by means of Park, who tries to kill her. So guys ought to shoot him in self-defense. She also finds the annoying revenge some way has organized for Ka. When the professor arrives at the river house, Min tries to warn him no longer to go inside, but he doesn't hear and searches the rooms for his daughter. He received is found lying down on a pile of rose pets. But when Ka tries to select her up, she discovers her physique is missing and only her head and limbs are there. It turns out she's been useless all alongside, and the messages he's heard had been recorded earlier than she got killed. The reason why her physique isn't always there is that it had been used to exchange Yunaz. For this reason K's autopsy and proof tampering had been finished on his own daughter while Ka suffers in despair. Soho suggests up to tell him, now he knows the ache he's long past. Vile livid Ka steals Men's gun and shoots some way, claiming it is what he wanted. However, Ka can't forgive himself now. So he uses the gun again, this time on himself. Make positive to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch extra movies like this. Thanks for watching.